Hello everybody, Konaja here. Welcome back to Automation. Today we're continuing on in our American Engine recreation series. And we started off with some small block Chevys. We did 6 of those. Now we're going to move on to something with a little bit more grunt, if that seems possible. And we're going to start with some big block Chevys. Not as many to work through here. Obviously, the whole premise of a big block motor has kind of gone away, at least in production cars anyway. But that doesn't mean that it's not worth looking into, especially in the 60s. That was like the heyday of the big block motor. And we're going to work through the two of the first and most the most iconic big block motors, at least to me. My mind instantly went to them, and that is the 409 and the 427. Now, you might be thinking, hey, didn't you do a 427 last episode? Aha, but that was a small block 427, and there is a difference, and you will see what the difference is later. But first off, let's start with our 409. So obviously it's a V8. Now this motor ranges from about 1961 to 1965. So we got a lot of clicking to do here. I'm going to go with 65 because we're probably going to need all of the technology possible, at least as far as the game goes, to make these work. So we'll stick with the last year of the motor. Cast iron on the block. Pretty much obviously there. It is 109. Gigantic. 109.5 by 88.9. If you watch the little dev update Kilrob put out, you'll see that these bore and stroke sliders are getting adjusted. If you notice now, when I adjust the stroke of the motor, not much happens until you make like some kind of gigantic swing at it and bump the bore, which I've messed up there. What was it, 190? Oh, 109.5, yeah, 190. So that's getting adjusted so that the engine scales according to stroke as well, because let's face it, you can't have a huge long stroke motor without it ending up being a little taller. So there will be a price to pay there. But we need 88.9. 88.9. That gives us about a 409, a 408.5 cubic inch motor. These feature a forged steel crank because at 409 cubic inches, they make a buttload of torque. So you need a crank that can handle that. But everything else is just normal cast. Not going to be a high revving motor. The top end, let's go up a couple ticks on the bottom end. These were more high performance motors, so they put a little bit more emphasis in them. Push rod obviously on the top end. Cast iron head material as well. The compression ratio is going to be fairly high. This motor that I'm building is kind of the top of the line 409. There is a bunch of other ones. In this era, there was a lot more variants per year and per model. So we're going to go with the later year 65. Would be featured in your Impala SS's and, you know, the big, huge boats that weren't necessarily, quote-unquote, muscle cars until you put this gigantic motor into them to get them up and moving. So the compression ratio on this one is going to be 11.25. So I'm going to go with, oops, not 10.2, but 11.2. You can see that gets us pretty close into the high range there. Cam profile, I'll leave it 40 because the one I'm looking at here doesn't seem like it's a race motor per se, but more of just a high performance street motor. So I may do a little like within reason swing in this, but we'll leave that for later. Obviously no VVT or PVL. Style wise, not too fancy, not the modern one of course. We'll do that finned in black, looks good. naturally aspirated. Fuel system is obviously carbureted as well, but you got twin 4 barrels on this puppy, so really throwing some fuel down in that thing. We'll put a standard air cleaner on there for now. Running on super leaded. Fuel mix, we'll keep it fairly middle of the road. 13.1 seems to be a nice sweet spot. Won't mess with ignition timing just yet. RPM limit is tricky. Information is not as readily available on that kind of stuff for these older motors, but what we do have to go off of is the horsepower ratings. This motor was rated at 425 horsepower at 6,200 RPM. So we know it has to do at least 6,200 RPM. So I'm going to put it at 62. I'll go up if it allows me, but I kind of doubt it's going to. Which reminds me I need to go up on the quality of the top end because, like we've said, if anybody knows how to make a push rod setup, it's going to be the Americans. Alright, so I think we're done with fuel. Exhaust, we'll just do short cast headers down to a 2¼ inch. Yeah, that should be enough. 2¼ should be plenty. 2¼ inch dual exhaust. No catalytic converters. First muffler, let's go with a reverse flow. And we won't put a second muffler on there. We'll see how ridiculously loud it is. So there we have it. There's our first mock-up of our 409 big block Chevy. Let's hear this sucker go. So first look, it looks like I'm going to run into some knock issues. It revved up all the way, but it exploded on the way up there. Maybe that was a valve issue? Yeah, failed due to valve float. So we're going to go even higher on that top end quality. We'll go up to 10 and see if that is enough. That was the only reason it failed, wasn't it? Let's see, fuel octane 96. No, so we are way too high on that regard. So we can richen it up a hair, pull some timing. I'll go down to 30. I can't pull on the compression, but I can give it a little bit more cam profile. So we'll go up to 50 there. And let's see if that brings that number down into a reasonable range. So still have an issue with the top end exploding. I don't really know how to improve upon that. Let's see. I can go all the way up to 15, but I don't think that even that will do it. Let's quick test this. Nope, it still fails. Fails from valve float. Interesting. So I'm not entirely sure what I'm gonna do about that. I can bring the RPM limit down a little. Obviously we're not going to be able to hit our 425 horsepower at 6,200 RPM, but who knows how accurate that was anyway. Looks like the octane's still a little high, so let's come back down off that timing even a bit more, and maybe up on the cam profile a bit more as well. Let's quick run that. Looks like, well, let's run it all the way through, because it looks like we got numbers that are more in the range we're looking for. Okay, you can see we're still really struggling at the top end. The bottom end is struggling. It's reaching an RPM limit, so tech-wise we're having some issues. I have a feeling if we increase this year, we would be okay, but that's not when this motor was made, so I'm sticking with what we got, and I'll just try to make it work. I had a feeling this is probably going to be a struggle. Let's go up the exhaust a little. It seemed like maybe it was choking off a little bit. Go up even more on the cam, more than I thought I was going to. Okay, so now what I've got is the power getting close and the torque being too high. Barely too high, but too high. I can come down on that RPM limit even more. I don't know how crazy I want to get with this cam profile though. So, okay, we came down a little bit on the torque, but we got 424 horsepower. That's getting close to that 425 mark. Obviously, it's a little earlier than what we thought. It says it's running rich, but I don't know that I can do much with that. Let's see. That got rid of the rich issue. Gave us that little bit of bump in horsepower. What else can I do to get it closer? Nothing really. I think with the year that we have and the restrictions we have on technology and stuff like that, this is kind of gonna be as good as we get. So not perfect, but pretty darn close to what you would have in a big block 409. Alrighty, so let's move on to another big block motor that's a little bit newer, so hopefully that'll be a little easier to make. V8. We're going to go back to the last year for this motor was 1969. Okay, so 1969 cast iron, and that is going to be 108 by 95.5. And that gives us a 427 or 426.9 cubic inch motor. Now this one also features that forged steel crank, but just cast con rods and pistons. We'll go up a little bit on the bottom end. 427 that we're building is the L-71, which was featured in your 67 to 69 Corvette Stingray, among other things. So a pretty high performance motor. Basically this is one of the Mac Daddies of the street big block Chevys, so not gonna discredit their technology or quality at all, so we'll be very generous with that. Push rod once again, 11:1 compression this time, so a little bit less. I'm gonna go up to a 50 on the cam profile to start with. Let's go with those fins again, but we'll go with some orange. Wish it was a darker orange. I don't like that light orange. Orange valve covers, or rocker covers, if you will. Naturally aspirated, carbureted on this guy. I know you might be thinking Corvettes were kind of famous for their fuel injection setups, but no, the 427 was a 3-carb setup of 2-barrel carburetors, so we had 3 2-barrel carburetors on this one. We're gonna put a performance intake on this guy, super unleaded again. We'll go 13:1. That seems like a good safe number. I'm gonna back off the ignition timing a little, judging by how our last motor did. This guy, I have the readings at 435 horsepower at 5,800 RPM, so that sounds a little bit more realistic, and it's already set there. So I'm going to start with that. Put the short cast headers on there, 2.5-inch exhaust on duals, and that reverse flow setup seemed to work pretty well, so we'll go with that. Alrighty, so 427 MIG block. Let's see if we can hit 435 horsepower at 5,800 RPM and 460 foot-pounds of torque at 4,000 RPM. Okay, so same deal. Valve float and a bottom end issue. So let's go up to 10 on the bottom end and up to 15 on the heads. Let's go down to 5700. We'll give it a little bit of a breather. Looked like it was running. Yep, needs a little bit less timing as well, and maybe a little bit more cam. Now let's see if we get closer. Alright, so we're creeping up on it, but not quite there just yet. We're still running a little bit lean, needed a little more octane, so engine is knocking. Yes, so I need to try and take a little bit more timing, give it a little bit more cam profile, which is fine because our numbers were still a little short. The bottom end issue, I don't know that we're going to solve that necessarily. Let's go up to 12. I don't know that we're going to make it there. Okay, so now I'm running rich, but I don't have enough octane, which sounds bizarre, but I understand the problem and why it's happening. So let's take a little bit off the fuel mix and a little bit more cam profile. We're gonna have to go way down on this timing. Let's do a quick run. Let's see. It's still running rich. That's surprising. It's down to 13.2. Still rich. I don't know if that's a carburetor issue or what. I go down on timing again. One more click on fuel mix. Okay, so no more rich, but how are we on power? 442 foot-pounds, 415 horsepower is a little short. We have enough exhaust tuning, right? Yes, that's enough for about 500 horsepower. Let's try some tubular headers. See if we can squeeze a little bit more out of it. I got a little bit of an increase, but not too much. I'd like to get up at least a 430 though. So I'm going to go even higher on this cam profile. This is the L-71, which was as I said, the high-performance street motor, so it was not meant to be, a nice smooth idling daily driver kind of motor. $424. So now we're about even. We're starting to come down on that fuel octane finally, though. So I'm going to go all the way up to 70 and give it a little bit of an ignition timing bump to try and gain some of that horsepower back. 426, and we've got a little bit left in the timing. 436. That's about right. Still a little short on torque, but I wouldn't say 436 foot-pounds of torque is short in any regard. So I think that is going to do it for our 427 big block Chevy. Yep. 427. Oops, not $1.27, even though this is a high dollar motor, for sure. Oops, I think I wrote the other one the way. 427. Shrink. I should actually put L-71 in there as well. Okie dokie. So there's two big blocks to join our small block Chevys. But next time we're gonna move on to something not so V8. There are some famous American engines that aren't necessarily V8s of all different manufacturers. So next time we might start leaving the GM family and explore some other manufacturers. So look forward to that, and I will see you next time.